Congratulations, you have found the Lambcast, the official podcast of the large association of movie blogs, also known as the Lamb. The Lamb is the largest collective of online movie blogs and podcasts with 2,000 members and counting. Every week on the Lambcast, various members of the Lamb community get together to talk about our favorite subject, movies. So bookmark the Lamb and follow us on social media. Be sure to join us each week to hear a lively discussion of films and movie-related talk from our members. Join the flock at largeassmoviebloggs.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 736 of the Lambcast. I'm Richard Kirkham, your host from Kirkham A Movie A Day. This week we feature a film about motorcycle riding that doesn't feature a lot of motorcycles because it's really about people who choose a lifestyle focused on motorcycles but who mostly spend time drinking and fighting. Joining the show this week are two guests well known for their leather-wearing, hard-drinking, fist-tossing lifestyles. In a bar fight, you definitely want them at your back. Let's meet them now. First up is a loner that everyone loves and wants to be just like, who can't commit to anyone except himself. He's capable of standing on the street all night without the need to urinate. You all know Howard Casner.
Oh, no. I have not been able to stand on the corner of any place all night without the need to urinate for years now.
Well, just don't sit on the motorbike and urinate, because that'll probably ruin the paint.
Yeah.
Also joining us is a man who would be a leader, but only reluctantly. He mumbles his way through most conversations with a cigarette in his mouth. James Wilson has the leather jacket on and a pint in his back pocket, and he's ready to rumble.
So, Richard, what's the difference between a vacuum cleaner and a motorcycle?
I'm not sure if I know the difference, except I don't want to be riding a vacuum cleaner.
It's the position of the dirt bag.
Ah, I like that.
That's actually very good. That's worth a lot of laughter, but, you know.
Not today.
Well, I'm not sure if our show is going to feature Wyatt, Billy, and George, or if we're going to get Larry, Moe, and Curly, but the three of us are ready to talk The Bikeriders. The new film from Jeff Nichol is based on a book, but not a book with a narrative, which becomes clear during the movie. We follow a group of guys who are outsiders looking for validation who form a motorcycle club that eventually devolves into a gang. The story, as it is narrated by a woman who falls for one of the biker boys as she recounts her life for the photojournalist taking pictures of the club. As always, we'll stay spoiler-free for the first part of the show, and we'll warn you when the spoiler wall comes down. Howard, let's start with you and your general thoughts about The Bikeriders.
Well, the movie reminded me of three other movies in a way, with a huge difference. And the three other movies that I came up with are Quadrophenia, Saturday Night Fever, and Nomadland. And what those three films have is that somebody went to a subculture and did not just a study of it, but also created a story or plot within it, created a drama within it, but really gave you an insight into what this subculture was like. The disco scene in Saturday Night Live, the battle between the mods and the rockers in Quadrophenia, and then living out of your van, being a sort of nomad in Nomadland. The huge difference is that for Saturday Night Live and Quadrophenia, I understood why these people love this lifestyle. I understood why it turned them on. I understood why it excited them. I understood their lives outside of it. I understood what void it filled and why it was so important to them. Nomadland was somewhere in the middle, maybe because the story wasn't always that interesting. But even for Nomadland, I more or less understood what it was that these people got out of this lifestyle and lived it. I'm sorry. For the Bikeriders, I have no idea why they're interested in motorcycles. I have no idea why they like riding the bikes. I have no idea what their life as bike riders is really like. I don't know what it's fulfilling in their lives. It's a mystery to me. It's just a complete mystery. These people, this way of life. one of the things I think is sort of funny is when you say, we'll let you know when we get to the spoilers. But I'm going, there are no spoilers. We don't have to worry about that here because there's absolutely nothing really in this film that happens that could be concealed a spoiler. Because there's no plot, there's no character development. It looks nice. The acting is good when you consider that they have no characters to play. So technically, yay, but everything else, I'm sorry. It just someone on Facebook called it the Lords of Monotony. And I think I agree with that.
Well, Howard was not shy in expressing his opinion about the story in the Bike Riders, and I think I've already tipped my hand a little bit. But let's find out what James thinks.
I'm kind of with Howard and probably you, Richard, on this. I'm a big fan of Jeff Nichols. I really liked his past films, especially his last one, Loving, which I think everybody should see. But this one has a real problem in that the script is more of a scrapbook than it is a screenplay. The characters are a little bit... There's an inarticulateness. The characters are a little inarticulate, and more than a little inarticulate, they're very inarticulate. It's a little hard to understand what it is they've got going for themselves in this club, other than the fact that they basically see themselves as ostracized people. That's a theme that's going throughout all of Jeff Nichols' films. And they band together under this one interest and, make the rules up as they go along. I had problems all the way through the movie, and we'll get to those as we go along. I thought the acting was fine. There's this veneer of I didn't really buy them, other than the fact that they were playing types. In fact, the leader of the gang, Johnny, is playing something that he actually saw in the movies. So there's this layer of artificiality throughout the whole thing that didn't make me believe it. Now, I've seen some of the pictures from the Bike Riders book, and you can tell that Nichols is trying to recreate the look of that book, but he doesn't really recreate the sense of what being part of this gang and what it all means to them is. Just when you think you're trying to get a lock on it, it veers away and doesn't really tell you what they're feeling. Of all of Nichols' films, I think this is the least of them. And I came away kind of interested in the sociology aspect of it and how it applies to people's lives in how they glom onto each other and form a club of like interests. When I started writing this review, I said, I can see it in the way that all of us movie lover bloggers have glommed together to form the large association of movie blogs. And it's nice to have that interaction with like-minded people where you might not be able to communicate what you're thinking about as far as movies when you're really studying movies, that your family or friends might not be able to actually latch on to and understand. But as Howard said, this is a bunch of people who don't have lives outside of this club. And that's all kind of a mystery.
I agree with that. That's one of the things I found interesting. So I'm going, how do these people pay for anything?
That was my question. How do they afford the beer?
How do they afford the membership dues? What do they even do with the membership dues? I mean, John, yeah.
The closest I can tell is they pay the rent on that bar that they've taken over. And I have no idea what Johnny does for a living, although he's married and has 2 kids.
Yeah. They indicate that he has a job, but you're not sure what it is. One of them is a mechanic, the guy with the earring, the dangling earring, and you get the impression that Brucey does something for a living, but what it does, you have no idea. And you just wonder, how do these guys function? You don't know, and you're never told. And that became kind of an important question. How does their their view of themselves as outsiders, how does that apply to their work life if they have one? How do they function? And it seems like they only function as a club.
One of the interesting things about quadrophenia is everybody worships this one particular person. He's the top guy of the mods, and everybody thinks he's the greatest guy, and everybody models themselves after him, and they talk about him and this and that. And the great letdown is when they discover he's just a bellboy in a hotel.
Yeah.
And we don't have anything like that here.
No.
Yeah, I'm a fan of one Jeff Nichols film. I don't know that I've seen the others, but the film that I did see that he directed was my favorite film of that year, and that was Mud. And it was another one of those that looks kind of at a subculture that most of us don't know anything about. Living in a rural environment on the river and having the kind of lifestyle that the kids are having and struggling through the sort of I don't want to say upscale poverty, but it's certainly a different life that they're going through. I found that very interesting, and there was a story that went along with it. This movie feels exactly like it's based on a picture book. We're gonna get the pictures that are taken of the motorcycle club on the weekends when they are getting together for their activities, and the rest of the time we're not going to have much idea as to what's going on in their lives. I do want to talk about all the individual performances at some point or other, but it is strange to me that the 3 people that the movie focuses on, one is inarticulate, one has so much energy and the oddest accent in the world, and the other one, it sounds like Elmer Fudd with a cigarette in his mouth. And these are supposed to be the characters that hold us when not a lot of interesting stuff happens. There are incidents that come along that might hold our attention for a couple of minutes, but nothing is building here. In the last part of the film, there's a little bit more of a story arc, and you get a sense of how there's a different reason that some people are glomming onto this group membership than we had in the original group. And I like that idea, but that's not really what the movie's about. It should be about these people who are somewhat alienated and find solace or validation by being with other people that share their interest. But barely get any of that. There's a little bit of stuff about the motorcycle racing at the beginning, and then that's the last we know why everybody has gotten together, except when they explain why they're in the club, or what their name means, or something along those lines. It just wasn't very compelling to watch it that way, and because we're seeing something that's just filled with anecdotes about the club. And by the way, I suppose it's chronological, but it doesn't make much sense in terms of a chronology because these events happen over a period of time. But it doesn't look like much has changed except that the way people act. There are a couple of scenes where the tone feels different, and I think we're supposed to get some sense of the ominous end of the 60s era, but that shows up, kind of out of left field right at the end of the movie, and I thought that was a missed opportunity to be really. If you want to make this an anthropology lesson, there's a lot more that needs to be done.
Yeah, it's
Right.
One thing it does do is it shows that any organization that doesn't grow will rot, and I thought that that's an interesting observation, and it kind of, but it also shows that unless you've got some sort of aim in your organization, it's going to eat itself. The center won't hold because if it's not growing, it's dying. And I thought that speaks to certain aspects of society these days. I mean, you could make a parallel to that to social media, to political groups, things like that. But it takes a leap to do that. That to me was interesting, but like I said, it's just those thoughts in an aggregate, and it doesn't really do anything other than show you. It doesn't make an explanation. It just exists, and
it's like a diorama.
A little bit, yeah.
Take a look at this and see what it looks like, but we're not engaged with what we're looking at.
Exactly. That's where I fall on this. It's interesting, but nothing happens.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I think that I've seen all of his films now, and he started out as an art house director, and he was getting attention, so a lot of people were waiting for him to break through. And he did this very ambitious film called Midnight Special, which I liked, but didn't quite connect. There was and then I thought Loving was going to be his breakthrough film, but for some reason I don't understand. The critics didn't care for it that much. It didn't do well. It got an Oscar nomination for actress. I don't understand why that film didn't do a lot better than it was. Yeah. It was one of my favorite films, but he still hasn't broken through yet. And unfortunately, I don't think The Bikeriders is going to do it. I think one of his issues is that he's a very interesting visual stylist, and he has some writing ability, but he can't quite create a whole. He needs somebody else to come in and say, this isn't working, this is what's missing. You need a co-writer, is basically what he needs. He's not without talent as a writer, but somehow he can't quite bring it all together into a satisfying whole. The big exception for me was Loving, and that may be because he followed the original story rather closely and had that as the bedrock to it. But I think he's still struggling to break out from his position as an art house director who can't really get the attention maybe he needs or deserves.
Yeah.
Well, I think this film is maybe an attempt to do that, like we were talking about. He's got a very good cast. The production values are solid on this. The movie looks great. It's gotten some pretty reasonable promotion. It's doing a little bit of business. I don't know what their expectations were with this, but it's not the kind of film that people are going to come out of the theater and say, yeah, I got to recommend that to people because there was something about this that was really special. There's nothing particularly special about it, and there's nothing that is, I don't want to say memorable, because there are bits and pieces that are memorable, but there's nothing that would make you want to say, I really want other people to share this experience with me.
There's a couple of really good haunting experiences in the movie, but that's about it.
Well, it in a way has some structural problems because the movie is narrated by two people, by the wife of Austin Butler and the wife of Tom Hardy. But they're narrating a story that they barely participated in and didn't see. Almost everything that they're narrating or seen through their eyes, they never saw. And that's always a little odd to me. That's always a little difficult for me because, you know, you can get away with a little of that, like they do in All About Eve and Citizen Kane. You can get away with a little bit of it, but the more you get away from it, you go, well, how does she see this stuff? How does she know that this is what's happened? The other issue I have is I can understand why Jodie Comer's character falls for Austin Butler's character. I mean, he is this alpha male. I have no idea what he saw in her. Absolutely nothing there. And that never made any sense.
That it was Jodie Comer, and he was listening to her testing something out, and it was actually the clip of the woman who was telling the story originally, the real Kathy. So apparently it's an accurate reflection of the character. It felt a little odd to me, but I thought it was very good. And by the way, since we're kind of crossing this line here on a different subject, I do want to talk about the characters and the performances. This movie, I think, is not about either Tom Hardy or Austin Butler. It's about her. She is the star of this movie, and she is the character that we focus on, even though the other two characters are supposed to be, you know, like Howard was talking about, Austin Butler's Benny is the alpha male who everybody wants to be like. Here's the deal. Tom Hardy's character sees Brando and wants to be like him, and then he sees Benny and realizes he is like that guy. That guy is like Marlon Brando in The Wild One. It's not, you know, and he aspires to that kind of, you know, lifestyle. I have no idea what the Kathy character was like outside of what we see. You mentioned that you couldn't figure out what it was that he saw in her, except that she's different from all of the other women that he was encountering, and maybe that's what was different. Maybe that's the thing that drew him to her.
What other women was he encountering?
Well, there was the girlfriend that she goes to see, and then there are other women in the bar. We don't really get much background on any of that, so we don't know what was going on. So I would agree with you. Although, you know, they're kind of, what would you call it? It's a strange meet cute that they have in the bar.
I mean, I feel like that if it had been her story, it would have been a lot stronger. But I think when you say it's her story, my response is, I think it was supposed to have been her story, but it didn't end up being her story.
Well, her story is all her story about the other people.
Yeah. Except that she's telling stories that she didn't see or experience.
Yeah.
So it's not her story. If it had been her story, I think it would have been a lot stronger. But it's not her story, and that's one of the major issues I have with it, is that it's not. And I think it would have been more interesting if it was. If we had found out what her life was like, what she thought, what she saw, how she reacted to things that happened in it. But instead, it's just all these stories that have nothing to do with her. And, you kind of wonder, I just don't see it. And then it jumps to the other woman to narrate for a while. I think if you compare it, I mentioned Orson Welles, I mentioned Citizen Kane and All About Eve, where all the sections are narrated and seen through somebody's viewpoint. And they do cheat a little, but nothing up there isn't what that individual narrator saw or experienced, or at least was told in some way. Here, there's hardly anything, I feel like, that you really saw or experienced in this story. So I don't know where she's getting all these stories from.
Well, she's probably getting them from her husband, the inarticulate Benny.
Yeah, so we have we're getting a story of two unreliable narrators.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're not even getting a story.
Yeah.
We're just getting some
snippets of
and banal and
rumors,
boring incidents.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk a little bit about Austin Butler for a second, because watching his back react to people who are interacting with him, there are some fight scenes that come up here and there, but it's not really like there is a strong personality that's being presented here. It's all a caricature of this iconic image of a biker that we're getting, and it just seems like you said earlier, it's like we are looking at an artifice of this type of character.
Yeah, he's James Dean taken to an extreme, and that would be fine if there was an emoting like there was James Dean, but no, it's just he's the cardboard stand-up for James Dean. He looks the part, and he articulates through a movement of his head, but that's about it. I mean, what it looks like, other than he's not a real participant unless there's a fight.
Yeah.
He purposely goes into this bar. Yeah, he purposely goes into this bar wearing colors that he's not supposed to, won't take them up, is thrown out and gets beat up. And we have no idea why he does that. We
have no idea why he throws himself into that
situation. There are people who do that, and they can be really interesting characters. But here, I have no idea. We're giving no context as to why he does it. And then it's followed by that incredibly terrifying fascistic scene where the motorcycle gang burns down the bar, and the police and firemen are too terrified to go put it out because of the gang, and are going, well, this could lead somewhere interesting, and it never does.
Never does.
Yeah. Well, there is a one point where somebody was talking about, I think it was the Kathy character, talking about how potentially dangerous that kind of power was, and they'd never do anything with it. Johnny never seems to exert any power over the motorcycle club. It's not a gang, it's a club. Until it's time to decide who gets in and who doesn't get in. And that seems to be about the only thing that he is deterministic about. Everything else he's incredibly passive about. He's trying to pass on his responsibility to Benny the whole time, and Benny's just not interested in any of that. Because like we said, he's a loner, and even though he's in the club and has a sense of identity with the group, he doesn't want to be. He doesn't want any responsibility, and I think maybe there's a story there about accepting responsibility or shirking responsibility. But I'm imposing that on the story. It's not being given to me.
Well,
right.
there is a.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say there's a movie from Australia called Romper Stomper, which is about skinheads. And there's a through line. There is an Austin Butler character in it, but he has this incredible transformation where he realizes that he has to get out of this nihilistic group of people before it's too late, and it's because he falls in love. But this doesn't happen here. You kind of wonder, they start off the movie with Marlon Brando's character in The Wild One, and someone saying, "What are you rebelling against?" And he says, "What do you got?" Which is one of the most iconic, Marlon Brando lines. And I just don't know what Austin Butler's character would say if you went up and said, "What are you rebelling against?" What would he say? Would he say, what's rebelling? What are you talking about? I mean, there's nothing there.
Yeah.
None of the characters have anything there.
Interestingly, Brando was horrified by the fact that his character in The Wild Ones became so popular and people started to emulate it. And Brando was, he was a Midwestern guy with an outsider's perspective, but even he couldn't understand why people would be attracted to that character and even want to emulate it. He just found it unfathomable.
There's sort of an irony here, I think, of the history of motorcycle gangs, because you had them starting out in, say, the 40s or 50s, where they weren't necessarily that criminally inclined. They were just people who got together who liked to ride motorcycles. They would go on trips. They would do this, they would hang out, etc. And then they became the devil's angels or whatever they are. And they became massively into criminal activities. Today, motorcycle clubs are just people who get together and like to go on motorcycle trips. So in real life, it's almost like we've come full circle. And we're back to what the motorcycle gangs were originally in this movie, in a way.
Yeah, well, there's a big difference between the Hells Angels and the Wild Hogs. There's an element in this movie in the later parts that suggests that one of the changes that occurred was in the nature of a generational change, that we went from people who are living a post-World War II experience as outsiders, trying to find something that they could identify with, trying to find their families, to a Vietnam era generation that is rebelling, and they've got rebellion for all kinds of reasons, but in particular, we got a bunch of post-traumatic stress disorder cases that are now in the motorcycle club that have lost all sense of, fraternity or organization or social structure.
I would have loved to have seen that movie. I think that would have made a good movie.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what they're hinting at, but it's just not. Well, we've said it. The problem with this is that there's not really a story. It's three characters in search of a core without any particular plot, and I think that is the problem with it. On the other hand, I do want to suggest that there are a few things in this film that are appealing and interesting and not unworthy. There are a ton of supporting characters that appear in the movie that I appreciated and enjoyed. I thought they were idiosyncratic. They had some clever moments. There were times when it looked like there might be something that's going on here that would be worth following up on. There wasn't always a follow-up on it, but I like that. Michael Shannon's character is, he's kind of like the symbolic version of the next generation. He's got kinds of problems that are hard to identify, but he's an interesting character. What's the guy who shows up from California?
He just disappears.
Yeah.
It's like they couldn't come up with anything to do for him. Or, the character, maybe the real person just sort of dropped out.
It's sort of like, gee, I owe you, Michael. You've been in all these other movies of mine. I got to put you in this movie.
Yeah.
And then doesn't give him anything to do.
And
you're thinking of Norman Reedus as Sonny.
Yes. And I'll tell you what, the audience that I saw the film with reacted to him immediately. Obviously, he's somebody who's from something that I haven't seen.
The Living Dead. That's
okay, there you go.
In fact, he has his own Living Dead, apparently, show. However, I'm with you. I have no idea who he is.
And he seemed fine, and I like I said, I like that sequence when he's sitting there and he's talking, why is he there? And he's come out for Cal, who didn't give up his colors when he left. And I'm going, oh, is this going to be and they kind of turned it into a funny bit where it looks like there's going to be a confrontation. Then it's, no, we're just going to have a beer and a picnic. And I kind of like that moment as it played out. The guy who is the original kind of second in command to Tom Hardy's character, Brucey, is great. I know now him. I did know. I knew him from Justified, and I thought he was kind of an interesting character too. Just kind of following along and do it. That's the closest we get to Johnny exercising any power, because he could just tell Brucey to do something and he would do it. And we don't even see some of what's going on. Like when we have that scene, the confrontation at the bar that gets burned down, the two guys that actually did the beat down, Brucey just has to go off screen and take care of them. We don't see that follow up. All we're seeing is the collective action there in front at the bar as it burns down. Which I didn't mind being spared that, but it was one of those things where, well, clearly Johnny's got some power here. This would be where we would see, let's see that power corrupts story, but we don't really go there.
Right. I mean, he burned down the bar, and which is not guilty at all. But off screen, they might do something with the two guys who beat up, and they are the guilty ones. They went far beyond what they needed to do, but we don't see them taken care of. We just see this poor guy who has a bar and have it burned down, and I'm going, I'm missing something here. I don't know how I'm supposed to react to this, especially since they drop it and they don't really refer to it or build off of it or go anywhere with it.
Yeah, it was, like I said, there are individual moments in the film that are kind of interesting and memorable, but they don't seem to sustain themselves. They don't seem like they are going in they're not building anything. It's just something that happened.
It's just random acts.
Yeah. Okay, well,
let's talk about Tom Hardy's accent.
Okay. Okay, you start.
First time I heard it, I just burst out laughing. I said, "Oh my God, this is like Marlon Brando doing an imitation of Arnold Stang." And I just kind of went with it. I said, "Okay, whatever. That's great. That's what you got. Okay, we're gonna do that." Hardy will always come up with a different voice for every character he plays, and this is, it's this weak little sighing voice.
Well, like I said, it's like Elmer Fudd isn't interested in hunting the rascally rabbit. He's going to ride his motorcycle.
Yeah, okay. But, I said, okay, that's an interesting choice. We'll go with it. There might be a statement in there, but we don't know why. Maybe he had a tape recording of Johnny. I don't know.
It was interesting, a little weird. Like I said, all of the three main characters. There's something. Austin Butler doesn't have much to say. Jodie Comer has a lot to say, and she's saying it very weird. And Tom Hardy, okay, maybe he doesn't have a lot to say, but when he says it, it's sure sounds strange.
So let's talk about those incidents in the movie that we did like, that we thought had something going for it, even if they didn't lead to anything that was particularly
important.
Important.
All right. Well, we'll call this the spoiler wall coming down, because, like I think Howard said it earlier, there's not really much to spoil here, because they're all kind of random incidents. Although, if you think about what ends up happening to the characters, there is stuff in there that might be a little bit of a spoiler. But we're going to talk about scenes that have maybe a little bit more resonance now, and hopefully this doesn't spoil it for anybody, but if you were concerned about that, come back and listen to the rest of the show after you see the movie if you're going to go ahead and do that. I think the one scene that obviously jumps out is the party scene at the end with Jodie Comer putting on the red dress. Is that one that you were thinking of?
No.
All right. Well, to me, that was the most dangerous scene in the whole movie, because we've made this transition with the new generation of vandals who don't seem to be interested in listening to what the older guys think, or they're not capable of following any directions or rules or kind of code of conduct, because they've been traumatized by their experiences in the rest of the world, and so they're just going to live that out. And Kathy is at this party, and she ends up, she admires a dress that this other girl is wearing. I'm not exactly sure if the other girl turned out to be a hooker or she was just loose, but her dress ends up being given to Kathy to try on. And the next thing you know, she is being approached by all kinds of people. And basically, we've escaped a rape scene by a few steps that goes on here, and it's all about how these newcomers they don't read the signals, they don't know the code, they are not capable of making a rational decision. They're all acting on impulse and desire, and I like the idea that there's something that's different about the group as a result of the changing membership, which also ties in a little bit with that other scene that I liked quite well, where Johnny kind of teases the one kid into being a member of the gang, and then keeps him out. And the twist on it is you have to just him, not the other guys. And the guy walks forward and he says, "Oh, what kind of friend are you?" He's exhibiting a code right there. It says that you don't validate this code. And I thought that was an interesting scene too. So we get those two things. If you put them together, there's something about the first generation of vandals that is different from the coming generation of vandals, illustrated by those two things. And I thought those were interesting.
They have no loyalty to their friends.
Right.
The other guys will come to the rescue of the other guys in the club. Just like, Benny mistakenly comes to the rescue of Johnny when there's this confrontation at one of these parties, and Benny just watches it, and they're basically talking about motorcycles, but it looks like it's going to be some sort of rumble, like they're squaring off. And so Benny comes in and
launches a first strike.
Yeah. and turns it into, this ruckus that they only manage to stop at some point, just because, they come in and it gets halted by somebody's, all of a sudden, wait a minute, what are we doing? What's going on here? But what were we talking about?
Well, you would. You said that there were some scenes that were worth talking about, and I had the two that I mentioned, and I was going to ask you what were the ones that you thought were interesting.
The Godfather Michael scene where Johnny is trying to get Benny to think about taking over the club, because Johnny's just thinking that the crown's too heavy, and he's seeing things change, and he thinks Benny's the guy to lead the Vandals into a new era, and Benny won't have anything to do with it, because for Benny, Johnny is the gang. He's the club, and doesn't want to see that change happen. It's shot like the dance between Elizabeth Montgomery and Montgomery Clift in Places in the Sun. It's a really tight close-up between these two faces. And I thought, oh man, that's, Jeff Nichols has seen another movie. Good. And then, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
And then the other scene that I thought actually had some depth to it is after Benny has left the Vandals and come back to Kathy. And now he seems to have a job. And he's just hanging out on the weekends, smoking a cigarette, talking to another guy, probably not talking about motorcycles, but talking about something else. And Kathy is looking at him. She's always had this conflict with Johnny. She says, he's mine. He's not the club's. You don't have him. I have him. Well, this is the point where she has him. And, he hears a motorcycle in the background, and it's like this siren song. And he just looks at her in the window and smiles. And she smiles in this knowing way. They both have this nostalgia, but they have nostalgia for other things between the two of them. And I thought that was just lovely. And, that if there was one clip that I would take out of this movie, it would be that one.
That's pretty much the final scene in the movie.
Yeah. It better resonate.
Howard, did you have a scene or two that you wanted to draw particular attention to?
I had a slightly different reaction to the scene, to the near rape scene, only because when it starts out and they bring her the dress, and she says, "Where did you get the dress?" And I said, "Oh, she just went upstairs with a couple of other guys." And Kathy, Jodie's character, Kathy just says, "Oh, okay." And I'm going, no, you better go upstairs and check on her, because she's probably being raped. So I suppose one could look at it as an interesting that, it got turned on her, that what she ignored in this other woman that she got the dress from is now happening to her. But I'm not sure that that scene had that depth, and that was the intention on it. The scenes that I think probably should have been used to anchor the film, it should have started out early on when they go through that town and those teenagers see that motorcycle gang go by, and you can just see in their faces. I understood why they wanted to be in the motorcycle gang, And then you have that scene. Yeah, that's a very good scene where he says, we want to be members. And he says, you can't be, you're underage. And then he says, well, you can be. And he, goes in and says, no, you can't. You betrayed your friends. So you can't be a member here. Then the third scene is he comes back with all these other people. His gang has grown. And basically says, I want to fight you over it. And then you have that really nice final scene where it's supposed to be with knives, but the guy just pulls out a gun and shoots him dead. And those four scenes sort of summarize what the story should have been about as a whole. And it wasn't.
You kind of have... There are bookend stories about the leadership that's going on there. You have that early scene with... what they call him, Big Jack or something like that, the redheaded guy with the beard, he's big guy, and he and Johnny get into a fight over who's going to be making the decisions about the gang, and it turns into a fight, and I mean basically they have the same power determining structure as they have in Wakanda. Whoever kicks the ass of the other person gets to lead the tribe, so to speak. And we're coming to that at the end again, but at the beginning, when it's are we doing fists or knives?
Right at the beginning.
Yeah, it's like everybody recognizes the code and that this is a club. They want power, but nobody seems like they are malevolent. Whereas at the end, it's all just about they're all bad, they're all crappy. Just some are less crappy than others. And the ones that are the crappiest are the ones that take over. And by the way, the way the two guys that came with Johnny to the fight abandon their dead friend and follow along with the gang that takes over. That just seemed to me like it was incongruent with the way that since they were supposed to be part of that older set, that just seemed a little strange that was going on at the end.
Yeah, they gave up their principles, if they had principles to begin with.
Yeah, and that's another one of those things. What are the principles? Where are the lines? The movies should be about things like that, and it's not quite. It wants to be, but it's not quite there. Well, do you guys have any other thoughts about the movie, or are we ready to call it a day on the Bikeriders?
I'm sure if you ask me
tapped
20
out.
minutes from... I'm going to say, I'm sure if you ask me 30 minutes from now, I'll have something to say. But right now.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same situation. Look, the film, there's obviously things to talk about, and I think the film wants to be something more than it is. It just doesn't quite get there. So, I can't quite recommend it to people, but I don't think it's a bad movie. I just don't think it's something that anybody's going to care that much about.
Actually, I think it's kind of a bad movie, but that's me.
That's okay. And James, you get the final word on this.
I think it's Jeff Nichols' least movie. I mean, I'll take...
That's definitely true.
I'll take Shelter and Especially Loving and Midnight Special and Mud over this one any day. And,
All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break here for some words from a fellow Lamb Podcasting Network show, and then we'll be back with our rants, raves, and reviews for the week.
In a world where podcasts already seem to address every imaginable subject, one man broke new ground with a seemingly random obsession about exploding helicopters in movies. He was a podcaster on the edge, a maverick broadcaster who played by his own rules. Now, he has a last chance to talk about the strange way helicopters explode in film. Exploding Helicopter, available on iTunes and Podomatic now. Think you know about chopper fireballs? Think again.
Well, it's been a while since we did rants, raves, and reviews, but that's what we're doing this week, so we're giving people a chance to talk about something that they want to talk about in addition to the Bikeriders. James, let's start with you. What have you got to rant about, rave about, or review?
I got a great rave for Viggo Mortensen's The Dead Don't Hurt, which is a Western he made, I guess, a couple of years ago, and has only been released and disappeared from theaters within a week and a half. I just thought it was a wonderful little movie about the trying to build the West and making inroads into civilization. It's acted to a T, and is a very nice reflection of how America was formed by immigrants, and I just enjoyed the heck out of it, and I wish there was more of an opportunity for people to see it.
Where did you see it?
I saw it in a theater.
Nice. So you did get a chance to see it in a theater. So this week or last week you saw it?
I saw it 3 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago. Yeah, stuff disappears out of theaters very quickly nowadays. I find it very frustrating that you can't depend on that very much. There are some theater chains that will hold a film for a longer time, but usually you only get one screening a day. And it's at 10:15 at night, and you go, well, I'm not staying up that late. It'll be streaming in the next week, so I may end up having to wait for it that way. But yeah. I liked Viggo Mortensen in what was it, Appaloosa? That was a western from a few years ago that was directed by Ed Harris, and I thought he was great in that, and I'm anxious to see him in another western. Also like Hidalgo, which is kind of a western.
Yeah.
So I think that's a natural genre for him to be working in, and I'm glad that people are making westerns. All right, good deal. Howard, what are you ranting, raving, or reviewing this week?
Well, I suppose I'll rave about something that I'm sort of late to the game on based on reactions I'm getting on Facebook, and that is a streaming service called TUBI, T-U-B-I, which I finally started watching. And, it's free. There are commercials, but I grew up with commercials watching TV, and they handle it very well. I don't know where they get their movies. I don't know where they get their library, and it's constantly changing. But I've run across movies on this thing I've always wanted to see. I've always wanted to see The Leather Boys, which is a 1960s kitchen sink British drama. I've always wanted to see The Detective with Alec Guinness, which is a Father Brown mystery. I just saw something called Pastor Hall, which I've never heard about, which is a 1940 British film that's based on the ending life of a pastor called Niemöller in Germany who was killed for standing up to the Nazis, and that was made in 1940. And then I saw something I never heard of called They Came to the City, based on a J.B. Priestley play in which 6 people, I think, or 8, are just suddenly magically transported to this door where they have a choice of either to stay or to go down and go on living in this utopian city down below. But they would have to give up things like capitalism and selfishness and greed and things like that. Never heard of it. Very entertaining. And also, if you like bad movies, I mean, there's nothing sometimes I like better than a really bad crime serial killer mystery from the 70s, 80s, or 90s. They got them out the wazoo. It has everything for everybody. It has foreign films, American films. So I've often found myself, they also have TV series. So I often find myself just going to that and saying, oh, what have they got available?
Well, I'm going to endorse Tubi, but I have a caveat that I'm going to do right here at the end as well. I've found a lot of things on there that I would not be able to find other places. The ads, the nice thing about the ads is they've got an indicator telling you how many ads there are, how much longer it is until the ads are done. So if you do need to check out for something while the ads are on, you can, or if you could just sit there and watch ads. By the way, I hardly ever see ads anymore because I don't watch broadcast television, and so I don't really see ads, and it's kind of interesting to see the ones that do show up there. And you're right, they have a wide variety of stuff that you're going to find there. That project that I've started that I am still enjoying, but I'm not, it's going to be an occasional thing, the Grindhouse Alley. Boy, are there a lot of those movies on TUBI, which makes it easy for me to do. Having said
on Grindhouse Alley,
yes,
think of me.
Okay, I will do that. I will do that. But here's the caveat. Yesterday, we decided that we were going to watch a Donald Sutherland movie, because of the passing of the actor this week, and we went searching. I thought I had The Great Train Robbery on a Blu-ray or a DVD. I didn't. So I went looking for it, and it was on TUBI, and I said, oh, great, we'll just watch it on TUBI. And I had praised TUBI the way you just did, Howard, to my daughter, convincing her that we could do this and the commercials won't be a big deal, and she said, okay. And we loaded it up, and it stopped 5 times in a row before it started. And they had a technical issue that was going on, and I couldn't get out of it, and I'm going, that was really frustrating. But that's the first time I've had that happen. But it did happen yesterday, so it's fresh in my mind. Hopefully, it's just a glitch in this particular film, and other things would probably play. But it was very frustrating. We ended up going to the Blu-rays and watching Eye of the Needle instead. So.
Interesting.
All right. Well, my rave this week is in anticipation of a movie that is my most anticipated film for the year, and that's Maxxxine. I went to see a screening of X, which is the precursor that had a prequel that came out 3 months after it came out 2 years ago. So there's X, Pearl, and then Maxxxine is the new film that's coming. This is from director Ty West, who has made a variety of horror films as well. And Mia Goth is the star of this film. And basically, with this screening of X, the bonus that they were giving us was at the end of the movie, we got the opening 5 minutes of Maxxxine. And I was anticipating this movie already. My anticipation level has increased substantially because this is just exactly what I'm looking for. This actress, Mia Goth, and this part that she is playing, they are a match made in heaven. I think she has been writing the part with Ty West and expanding on the storyline there, and she obviously is invested in it in a way that makes this work so well. I won't give too much away, except to say that the character that we get is really an amalgam of the character that survived X and the horrible preceding character in the prequel of Pearl. It's all about ambition and boundless ambition to be famous, and she does an audition, and that's basically what you're seeing is an audition, and she nails the audition, and it's just like, holy criminy, this is going to be good. I was very impressed with it, and I'm just seeing, like I said, the first 5 minutes of it. So if I can hype this movie up a little bit more, get people interested in it, maybe encourage a few people who haven't seen X or Pearl yet to go out there and catch up with those things before Maxxxine opens in a couple of weeks. I think it's scheduled to open on July 5th. Then I will consider my job done on this rave.
Yes.
Are either of you guys fans of these films?
I did a Don't Make a Scene on Pearl. And it's because there was so much talk about the one monologue scene that she has, which is absolutely amazing. almost one take, and goes on for quite a long time.
It's like 8 minutes.
And I don't know how many YouTube videos there are of people recreating that monologue. I just moved it again, so you probably. So I'm sold on Mia Goth, even if I'm, the horror genre is something I usually avoid unless there's a really good reason to see it. So yeah.
Okay.
I may see Maxxxine. The trailer looks intriguing, but we'll just see if I'm in the mood.
Yeah, that's understandable. I can appreciate that. One of my friends, when I posted about seeing X, one of my high school friends, his comment was, "You're a sick man." I'm going, yeah, maybe I am. So, all right, folks. Well, this has been our discussion of Bike Riders. I appreciate that Howard and James joined us this week for the show. Fortunately, we didn't have to choose between knives and fists. We got our golden tongues fighting on this show for supremacy. Although none of us, I think, won.
No.
All right. I want to give you guys a chance to talk about anything. James never wants to talk about anything, but Howard, you got something that you want to promote this week?
I just my last, if I can remember what it is, on pop art. What was the last one I did that's up now? It's with Top Liebenau, and we did the Fantastic Mr.
Yes.
Box and Straight Time,
right,
about two con men trying to go straight. Hopefully, I will start recording again, probably sometime around August. I may start recording it before then, but you probably won't see anything uploaded until August. We'll see how that goes.
James, anything?
Not a thing.
Okay.
I'm working on the Don't Make a Scene right now.
All right, and as usual on my site, it's just whatever I've been seeing in a theater. I had my X Revisit post up. I went for Father's Day to see Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade the other day. Tonight we've got Robert Rodriguez is presenting Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan down at the Paramount Theater, so we're going to be doing that this evening, and I'll have a post on that for you guys this week. We've got a few things coming up. Those of you who are listening, if you haven't seen the schedule for July and August, I'll post it in the forums so that if you want to join one of the shows, you can let me know, and then you'll have a chance to participate in the discussion. A couple of them have gotten very popular responses. I'm overwhelmed with the number of people who want to do the 1984 draft and the number of people who want to talk about Romulus back in August. So hopefully we can fill in a few other spaces, but we're going to have a lot to talk about in the rest of the summer. So that's our show this week on the Bike Riders. We'll catch up with you all next time on the Lambcast.
You've been listening to the Lambcast. If you have an idea for a show or would like to join us on the Lambcast, contact us at largeassmovieblogs.com.
Find us on Facebook, just search for Lambcast, or on X, formerly Twitter, at Lambcast. And you can find us on YouTube as well. The Lamb site can be found at largeassmovieblogs.com. We'd also love it if you would leave a review on iTunes.
It's all